What up, everybody? What up, everybody? Let me get to the spot. Hey, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time. It could be in the morning when you listen to this. This is Plan Your Greatness, and I am your gracious host, Carlton Hamilton. We are now at chapter 7, but let me do the quick weigh in so we can see where that is going. The weigh in today. I'm still holding steady around 250. I'm probably going to be going to the gym later on with my daughter. Had some transportation stuff, as you can see with my black dress, very professional attire. I had some clients. Some of my other drivers were not able to take care of it, so I had to fill in. And so had to push back my daughter, us getting to the gym. So we're going to probably get to the gym a little bit later on. But I wanted to get at this, and there's actually going to be 3 parts to this chapter 7. The title of the chapter in the book is Chasing Bobby Smith. But I cover quite a few things. In this first section, I'm going to try to cover it as quick as possible because there are 3 pieces, and I don't want each one of them to just be this long, drawn-out video. But this chapter covered some very particular things. As I was taking notes of this chapter, I had to break it up into 4 sections. I'm not necessarily going to make 4 different. I might end up doing 4 different videos, but there were 4 different parts, and I'm not sure if I remember if I combined 2 of them into one video. But the first thing I wanted that this chapter talks about, when I say chasing Bobby Smith, that's reference to a kid that I was classmates with when I was in the 3rd grade, and that was a very integral point in my life because it was where I had really got mentally fed up with what was going on in the country, and that was segregation or desegregation. They were taking all these black kids, including myself and all my other brothers and sisters, and they were dispersing us throughout a white school district. Now I get into the details of my little mind is going, why don't they bring the white kids into our district? Which is a question that we always ask, but that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother setup. It'd be very political if we start talking about that. But this particular section in the book, in this chapter, talks about my reaction to that and how different things came into play that affected me way later on in the rest of my life. And people who make those decisions, they know these things. They know the ramifications of what's going to be in the best interest of their community, and then what's going to be the potential fallout of in other communities. And so I talked specifically about that. I was 8 years old at the time. I was going into the 3rd grade. This was my 4th school in 4 years. So just imagine the shuffling around. And also there were some very important things that had happened a couple of years ago, a couple of years prior to me being in the 3rd grade, stuff that happened right at the end of my not kindergarten, but right at the end of 1st grade that was very impactful as far as how I saw myself. And so I talked specifically about these incidents that happened and why they were so impactful in 3rd grade, and then why they became much more pronounced and impactful later on in life. So it is a very, very powerful chapter as I kind of lay this out, like what, the mindset of this little 8-year-old, and then how things manifest later on in a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, and a 40-year-old. All right. So, I was very angry at that time, and I didn't know who, but I took it out on this kid. But reflecting back on it, I was actually mad at these political decisions that were impacting kids that didn't even know. All of a sudden, one day I'm walking down the street up, 10 minutes I can walk to the school. The next day I'm having to get up at the crack of dawn to be hoarded onto a bus and driven all the way across town, supposedly for my best interest, So, and what I had mentioned before was at the end of my first grade, I had knocked out the bully. And I go into details about that. Now just think how much of a transformational moment that was. I stood up to the bully, I knocked out the bully, and now I was looked upon in the neighborhood as that kid or that dude. And then all of a sudden now the district is, ripping apart our neighborhood, and now all of my friends, we're all, just on my street alone, there were kids. We went to like 4 different schools. So when we came home, we were always talking about our frustration with the world, as opposed to, the interaction that you would have with your classmates, and then these classmates are the people that you live in the neighborhood. My classmates, I didn't know where they lived. It damn sure wasn't in my neighborhood, because I was in the class, and in a lot of classes, in my particular class, I think I was the only black, or maybe there was another black kid in the class. And so that kid was on the other side of my neighborhood. So I didn't even know him. So it was just very frustrating. And I do talk specifically about how my mother, the teacher, and the principal worked together to avoid getting me suspended as I was picking on this kid. Ingenious in what they came up with, as far as how they handled that situation. Today it'd be pretty obvious that would have been, I would have been suspended. And it would have probably spiraled me into, who knows what type of life it would have come about from that, because they worked together then. And the other thing is that I remembered, and I was reminded of. I didn't write this in the chapter, but I remember that this was me going into elementary school. What I don't talk about is that my older brothers were integrating junior highs and high schools. And there were riots, race riots, because the predominantly white districts didn't like it. Now, I find that interesting. Why would you do that? Now, I have my theories, and that would be a whole separate video as far as my theory on why we were chosen to integrate the school district. Because I can clearly look at that now and say that, no, it was never for the best interests of us as black kids. And again, maybe I'll make a video about what my belief is, but I would have to do some research. Because if you start jumping on a topic like that, you've got to do your homework, because you got to have some things to kind of back it up. But I just have a theory on that it was not in our best interest, it was in their best interest. And, I might just do that just to break down my theory and then see what people give me as far as feedback on that. The other thing that came out of that, and I pointed out in this chapter, was at a very early age, all of us, specifically talking about me, we were now then indoctrinated into believing that our schools were inferior, and where we were going was for our best interest. We were going to better schools. We were getting a better education. And if you're a child, you are going to subconsciously just absorb that, to believe that white folks' water is colder, that the books are better, that the teachers are smarter. This is just all, a part of a large system. And again, I'm not going to go too far on that, but that, to me, that is a very damaging, because I was going to school with kids that look like me. Why do I need to go into their school? Why not fix my school or leave my school intact? But again, very, very strategic on how they were doing that and what it was promoting. And I wrote specifically down, it was promoting self-hate, because we didn't have any control over that. And that's whole nother video where I would be talking about, where was our control over these things? And I would have to go back so far. I would have to go back to the continent of Africa, to try to figure out how did we get in this predicament where we don't control anything. All right. Now, at that same time, by the time I was 8 years old, I had formulated a relationship with my father, and it wasn't a very good one. He conditioned me to believe that I didn't have very much value. So that now, if you understand and you follow me on this, Here I am at home. The most powerful view of myself was coming from my father. And this man was making me believe and reminding me of it as much as he could, anytime he had an interaction with me, that I didn't have any value, that I wasn't even worth being around him, because he had nothing positive to say about me. No praise. Everything was always discipline centered. So here I am thinking, well, my dad thinks I'm a piece of shit. So now that means that now I gotta go someplace else. They're better. That place has more value. So it just confirmed what my dad said. You ain't shit. So this whole environment that you're in ain't shit. You're going to a better place. See how dangerous that is? And that's one of my 3 truths where I say, number 1 is the parents have the most powerful and most important job, I believe, on the planet, because they set the agenda for your belief system. They're either going to condition you to believe you're worthless, you're not good enough, you're just lacking in everything, or they're going to give you the confidence that you can attack this world and you have value. And so you're going to approach things, from that position. So I carried that into everything. And it was reminded that as I carried it into everything, the one thing that helped save me as I was going through this rough patch of my life was that I was recognized early. Now, the one good thing I would say with my parents was the collaboration of them getting me into sports. Because had they not gotten me into sports, I guarantee I would have refocused that direction towards something very destructive. But sports got a hold of me, and it held on to me all the way as I got through. So that athleticism basically camouflaged the insecure thought processes I had, the lacking, the not good enough, the waste of my dad's time. Sports made me feel good, so I would always go back to sports. But it just camouflaged it for all the way up until I got to prison. Or actually it camouflaged it until I got hurt. And then I had to, hold on just a second. Sucker. Snuck. I thought I turned you off. But you snuck on me. All right. So my athleticism camouflaged everything all the way up until the injury and I left the game of baseball. Then all of these things started to come back. All the things that were set in motion by my father, by the school system, everything just came rushing back. Now, what was interesting is that, and this is what I'm going to leave with on this video, is that when I went to prison, it allowed me to rebuild my relationship I had with myself and my brothers. It renewed my love I wrote it down. I said it renewed my love for myself. It renewed my love for my blackness. It renewed my faith in brothers. It just renewed everything, because I said blackness has a rhythm. There is a rhythm of black life and black existence. And when you're told from such a young age that life does not have that rhythm, you don't hear it, you don't feel it. But when you go, what happened to me was when I went into prison, I was forced to be around my people. And then what happened is it just reminded me what was already there, was that black rhythm. And it has a sound, it has a feeling. And it was just awesome. And it's like, it was family. So as I end with this video, just talking about chapter 7, if that doesn't make you want to just get the book and then just look at that particular chapter, if nothing else, I don't know, because it's one of the most powerful chapters in that book. As you hear me, as you read me, and I'm going to do it in audio, you'll either read it or you'll hear me talk about my transformation, as this lost person, back to just having this love for myself and love again for my community. So with every video, I always put this out as far as a challenge. I wasn't sure what type of challenge I would have for this video, but what I will say is I challenge you to love yourself. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be very difficult for you to really love others, really listen to others, really just give your all, because you'll look for excuses. But when you love yourself, you set standards that are for you. And then typically, like I shared in one of the other chapters, and I think this might be in chapter 8 when I get to it, as far as when you're working somewhere and whatever the standards are for that job, or say just even anything, relationship, your standards should always be higher than whatever the job is, whatever the relationship, whatever it is that you're in. Your standards should always be higher. Why? Because if somebody has some standards for you and you don't live up to them, that's going to make you feel very you're going to be disappointed in yourself. But if you set standards that are higher than everyone else's, and maybe you fall short of your own standards, that's okay. You'll be like, I didn't quite get it. But more than likely, set them so high that if you don't hit your standards, at least you hit everyone else's. Okay? So that's my challenge to you. First, look to loving yourself. And that could come in a number of ways, and I'll probably talk about that in another video. But just think in terms of that before you can really engage in other people and really reach your full potential, you first have to love yourself to actually be able to set that standard. All right, this is Carlton Hamilton. This is Plan Your Greatness, and I'll say this again: plan your greatness. Why? Because no one else will. I'll see you next time.